I'm Autumn, 32, and I just bought my dream beach house in Florida. This morning, my phone exploded with texts from my family. We've packed our bags, my mom wrote. Can't wait to visit, my dad chimed in. My sister Heather sent a family photo saying, the kids miss their auntie. Funny how for years there was no room for me at holiday gatherings, but they always found space for Heather and her family. Now, suddenly, everyone wants to visit? Before I tell you how I responded to their sudden interest in spending time with me, let me know where you're watching from and don't forget to like and subscribe for more real-life family drama. Growing up in suburban Minnesota, our family of four seemed picture-perfect to outsiders. My parents, Linda and Robert, had good jobs, mom as a high school English teacher and dad in insurance sales. Our modest two-story home had a white picket fence and a backyard swing set. But inside those walls, the family dynamic was anything but balanced. From my earliest memories, my sister Heather, 2 years younger, was the undisputed star of our family. She was naturally pretty with honey blonde hair and bright blue eyes that mirrored my dad's. Outgoing and bubbly, Heather made friends easily and lit up rooms with her presence. She was athletic too, playing soccer and later becoming a cheerleader. My parents never missed a single game or competition. I was different. Quiet, studious, with brown hair and hazel eyes that didn't quite match either parent. I preferred books to balls, science to socializing. My mom once introduced us to her colleague. This is Heather, our little athlete, and this is Autumn, she reads a lot. That pretty much summed up how they saw us. When I was 9, I won first place in the school science fair with a project on water pollution. I came home excited, certificate in hand, only to find everyone gathered around Heather who'd scored her first soccer goal that day. That's nice, honey, Mom said, barely glancing at my certificate. But can you believe Heather's goal? Against the top team. My achievement was stuck to the refrigerator with a magnet, while Heather's soccer photos were professionally framed in the living room. By middle school, I'd learned that academic success wouldn't earn me the attention I craved. Still, I kept trying. I joined the debate team, thinking perhaps my parents would appreciate seeing me perform. They attended one debate out of an entire season, leaving halfway through because Heather had a dance recital the same evening. You understand, right? Mom said. Your sister needs us there. I nodded and swallowed my disappointment, a skill I was perfecting. High school brought more of the same. I maintained a 4.0 GPA, while Heather struggled academically, but shined socially as homecoming princess. When college acceptance letters arrived, I received offers from several prestigious universities, including Northwestern with a partial scholarship. My parents' response was lukewarm. That's going to be expensive, Dad commented. 2 weeks later, when Heather made cheerleading captain, they took the whole family out for a celebration dinner at the fanciest restaurant in town. The pattern was consistent, but subtle enough that voicing it would make me sound petty. After all, they never neglected my basic needs. I had food, clothes, a comfortable room. The neglect was emotional, a quiet preference that spoke volumes in accumulated moments. My saving grace during those years was Grandma Eleanor, my dad's mother. Unlike my parents, she noticed me. She'd visit from Milwaukee monthly, bringing books she thought I'd enjoy. You have a remarkable mind, she'd tell me. Never dim your light for anyone. In her small apartment filled with plants and books, I felt truly seen. When I was 16, I found Grandma Eleanor in her kitchen baking cookies for my visit. You know, she said, handing me a warm chocolate chip cookie, sometimes families develop blind spots. It doesn't mean they don't love you. They just don't see clearly. Why am I the blind spot? I asked, the question that had haunted me for years finally finding voice. She sighed, wiping flour-covered hands on her apron. Some children demand attention. Others, like you, deserve it but don't demand it. It's not fair, but understanding this might help you find peace. Her words didn't fix the situation, but they helped me understand it wasn't my fault. I wasn't unlovable or unworthy. I was just less visible in a family that responded to sparkle rather than depth. By senior year, I'd set my sights on Northwestern University in Chicago, 6 hours from home. Far enough for independence, but close enough for occasional visits. I hoped distance might reset our family dynamic, that perhaps absence would make their hearts grow fonder. The day I left for college, Mom cried a little, Dad patted my shoulder awkwardly, and Heather, then a high school sophomore, seemed genuinely sad to see me go. "Who's going to help me with my homework now?" she joked. As Dad loaded my modest belongings into the car, I noticed Mom was already on the phone planning Heather's Sweet 16 party, scheduled for the following month. I wouldn't be coming back for it. Classes would be in full swing. Looking back at our house from the driveway, I felt a complex mix of sadness and relief. I loved my family despite everything, but I was ready to discover who I could be outside their shadow. Little did I know that leaving home wouldn't end the pattern, it would only transform it into something more explicit. Northwestern University felt like stepping into another dimension. Suddenly, I was surrounded by people who valued intelligence, thoughtfulness, and academic curiosity, all the qualities that had made me invisible at home. My roommate Jessica, a linguistics major from Portland, was the first friend who seemed genuinely interested in my thoughts. We'd stay up late discussing environmental ethics, literature, and our dreams for the future. During freshman orientation, I met Kimberly, a vibrant biology major with a passion for marine conservation. "You're so articulate about climate science," she said after our first environmental studies class together. "Have you considered specializing in that?" No one had ever suggested my interests might translate into a career path. My parents had vaguely assumed I'd become a teacher like my mother, a respectable fallback rather than a passionate pursuit. With Jessica and Kimberly, I formed a tight-knit group that gave me the emotional support I'd craved. We studied together, challenged each other intellectually, and celebrated our achievements, however small. When I aced my first college-level chemistry exam, they insisted on taking me out for ice cream. "This is a big deal. You destroyed that curve."
Kimeklaimet.
I almost cried, not over the ice cream, but because someone thought my success was worth celebrating. Meanwhile, life continued in Minnesota. I called home weekly, conversations that followed a predictable script. Mom would answer, give me a quick update on her classes, then launch into extensive updates about Heather, her latest achievements, boyfriend drama, and social calendar. If Dad got on the phone, he'd ask practical questions about my courses and whether my scholarship was secure for the next semester. My first holiday break, Thanksgiving of freshman year, I was eager to go home. I'd earned straight A's in my first quarter, joined the environmental club, and even started volunteering at a local conservation center. I had stories to share, achievements I hoped might finally register with my parents. But when I called to confirm my arrival time, Mom sounded hesitant. "Oh, honey, we've made other plans. Heather's boyfriend Kyle is coming with his parents and Grandma and Grandpa Peterson. The house will be quite full." I could sleep on the couch, I offered, my stomach sinking. "Well, Kyle's parents are taking the guest room, and Grandma and Grandpa will be in your room. Heather and Kyle are in hers. There's just no room, sweetie. Maybe Christmas?" I spent that Thanksgiving with Jessica's family in Chicago suburbs. They welcomed me warmly, but I couldn't shake the hurt. My own bedroom was unavailable to me, yet somehow our 3-bedroom house could accommodate 7 other people. Christmas brought another excuse. "Your father and I decided to take Heather and Kyle to the cabin in Wisconsin. It's small, you know, that just 2 bedrooms. Next time, honey." The pattern continued throughout college. Each holiday came with a new reason why there wasn't space for me. Sometimes the excuses were elaborate, renovations making the house too chaotic, a water leak in my old room, unexpected guests taking the last available sleeping space. Other times they were transparent. "We thought you'd be too busy with school," or "It's such a long drive for just a few days." While I was working multiple jobs to supplement my partial scholarship and taking summer classes to graduate early, my parents bought Heather and Kyle a starter home as a wedding gift after she dropped out of community college in her second year. They married young. Heather was only 20, and Kyle started working for my dad's insurance company. My graduation from Northwestern, magna cum laude with a degree in environmental science, warranted only a brief visit from my parents. They drove in the morning of the ceremony and left immediately after, citing the need to get back for Heather's housewarming party the next day. They didn't meet my friends, see my apartment, or express any interest in the life I'd built. I gave them a tour of campus, pointing out the conservation lab where I'd spent countless hours on research projects. Mom nodded politely while checking her phone for texts from Heather. "We're proud of you," Dad said as they prepared to leave, but his words felt hollow when paired with their actions. They hadn't bothered to take a single photo during the ceremony. My first job after graduation was with a mid-sized environmental consulting firm in Chicago. The starting salary was modest, but it offered growth potential and aligned perfectly with my values and education. I found an affordable apartment with Jessica, who'd accepted a position teaching ESL at a local high school. That first year of full professional independence was transformative. For the first time, I could measure my worth by my own standards, the quality of my work, the respect of my colleagues, the difference I was making through environmental impact assessments. My supervisor, Diane, became a mentor, showing me what supportive leadership looked like. "You have a rare combination of technical knowledge and communication skills," she told me during my first performance review. "I see real potential for advancement if you're interested in growing with the company." That vote of confidence meant everything. I threw myself into my career, volunteering for challenging projects and pursuing additional certifications in my free time. By my second year, I'd received a substantial promotion and was leading my own small team on local projects. Each professional success helped heal a piece of my childhood insecurity, but the family dynamics remained unchanged. When I could afford to fly home for holidays, I was often met with the same old refrain: "There's no room for you." Meanwhile, Heather, Kyle, and their growing family always had guaranteed accommodations. During one Christmas visit, I arrived to find I wasn't expected at all, despite confirming my visit weeks in advance. "Oh, did we get the dates confused?" Mom said, looking flustered at the door. I ended up sleeping on an air mattress in the unfinished basement while Heather, Kyle, and their new baby Emma occupied not only Heather's old room but mine as well, which had been converted into a nursery. I left early that year, cutting my 5-day visit to just 2. As I hugged my parents goodbye, I wondered if they even noticed the pain behind my smile. Or worse, if they noticed, but simply didn't care enough to change. The next 5 years established a predictable rhythm to family gatherings, or more accurately, my exclusion from them. Each holiday season brought new excuses, each more transparent than the last. One Thanksgiving, I was told renovations made the house too chaotic for guests, only to see Heather's social media posts showing the entire family gathered around my mother's dining table. For Christmas the following year, I was informed that everyone's traveling, only to discover they'd all gone to my parents' cabin without me. My sister Heather now had 2 children, Emma and Tyler, who became the gravitational center of family life. My parents transformed into doting grandparents, restructuring their lives around the grandchildren's schedules. My father even reduced his work hours to babysit twice weekly. The Christmas gathering 3 years ago remains particularly vivid in my memory. After being assured there would definitely be room this time, I flew from Chicago to Minneapolis, bringing carefully selected gifts for everyone, including custom art supplies for my niece Emma, who showed creative talent, and a set of science books for 4-year-old Tyler. When I arrived at my parents' house with my arms full of wrapped packages, my mother opened the door with a startled expression.
"Autumn, was that today?"
"Oh dear, we weren't expecting you until tomorrow." Behind her, I could see the dining room table set for dinner, hear voices and laughter from the kitchen. The smell of my mother's traditional beef roast filled the air. "Mom, I emailed you my flight details last week." My confirmation said December 23rd at 2 p.m. She waved dismissively. "Well, you know how busy it gets this time of year."
Come in.
"We'll make it work." Making it work meant setting up an air mattress in the unfinished basement while Heather's family occupied 3 bedrooms upstairs. My old room had been permanently converted into a grandkids' playroom, full of toys and children's furniture. The guest room held Kyle's parents, who apparently visited regularly, while Heather and Kyle stayed in her childhood bedroom. During dinner, I sat at the far end of the table, squeezed in almost as an afterthought. Conversation revolved entirely around the children and local gossip about people I barely remembered from high school. When I attempted to share news about a major environmental impact study I'd recently led, my mother interrupted. "Oh, before I forget, Emma has her winter dance recital video. Should we watch it after dinner?" The pattern was painfully familiar, yet it still stung. After dinner, while everyone gathered in the living room to watch videos of Emma's recitals and Tyler's t-ball games, I retreated to the kitchen to help with dishes. My father wandered in for another beer. "You're quiet tonight," he observed, leaning against the counter. "Just tired from traveling," I lied. He nodded, clearly relieved not to pursue the conversation deeper. Well, it's good you could make it. Your mother wasn't sure you'd be able to get away from work. I scrubbed a pot with unnecessary vigor. I requested this time off 3 months ago, Dad. He responded noncommittally before returning to the living room. That night, lying on the lumpy air mattress surrounded by storage boxes and old exercise equipment, I questioned why I continued to subject myself to this treatment. The answer was both simple and complicated. Despite everything, they were my family. I loved them. I kept hoping things would change. Meanwhile, my career continued to flourish. I'd been promoted to senior environmental consultant, managed larger projects, and built a reputation in Chicago's environmental community. I'd even been featured in a local newspaper article about urban conservation initiatives. It was during this period that I met Brandon at a fundraiser for the Chicago River Restoration Project. Tall with kind eyes and a quick laugh, he worked as an architectural engineer specializing in sustainable building design. Our shared environmental values sparked an immediate connection, and within months, we were seriously dating. Brandon came from a close-knit family in Michigan. The first time he invited me to his parents' home for a weekend, I was struck by the easy warmth between family members. His mother, Susan, asked thoughtful questions about my work. His father, James, showed genuine interest in my opinions on current events. His sister, Melissa, teased him affectionately, but treated me with genuine kindness. No one was excluded or overlooked. Your family is amazing, I told Brandon during the drive back to Chicago. They're pretty standard, he replied with a shrug. They loved you, by the way. How can you tell? Mom already added you to the family group text. That's basically adoption in the Williams household. 6 months into our relationship, Brandon accompanied me to Minnesota for Easter. I'd warned him about my family dynamics, but he remained optimistic. Maybe they'll behave better with an outsider present, he suggested. His optimism faded quickly. We arrived to find my parents' driveway packed with cars, Heather and Kyle's SUV, my Uncle Jeff's truck, and 2 unfamiliar vehicles. Inside, the house buzzed with activity. My mother barely paused her conversation with my aunt to greet us. Oh, you made it. Find space wherever you can. We're about to hide eggs for the kids. No one offered to help with our bags or show Brandon around. We stood awkwardly in the entryway until my father noticed us. The basement's set up for you too. Hope that's okay. Brandon's expression shifted from confusion to concern as we descended into the unfinished space. The same air mattress awaited, this time with a slightly newer set of sheets. Where's everyone else staying? He whispered. Upstairs in actual bedrooms, I replied flatly. Throughout the weekend, Brandon witnessed the pattern I described. During the Easter meal, my parents lavished attention on Heather's children while barely acknowledging our presence. When Brandon mentioned our recent volunteer work with an urban farming initiative, my mother nodded distractedly before turning to coo over Tyler's new haircut. On the drive back to Chicago, Brandon was uncharacteristically quiet. I'm sorry, I finally said, breaking the silence. I should have prepared you better. He reached over to squeeze my hand.
No, I'm sorry.
I didn't fully believe it would be that blatant. The way they treat you, it's not right, Autumn. Maybe I'm overreacting. They're not terrible people. Not being terrible isn't the same as being good. You deserve better. That conversation marked a turning point. Seeing my family through Brandon's eyes helped me recognize that the pattern wasn't coincidental. It was intentional. And more importantly, it wasn't normal. The following week, I called my mother directly, determined to address the issue. Mom, I need to talk to you about something important. Can it wait, honey? I'm on my way to pick up Emma from ballet. It's about how I'm treated when I visit. The sleeping arrangements, the lack of interest in my life. She sighed heavily. Are you still upset about the basement? It's a perfectly adequate space. It's not just about the sleeping arrangements. It's about always feeling like an afterthought in this family, while Heather and her family get the royal treatment. That's ridiculous. We don't play favorites. Mom, I've slept on an air mattress for the last 7 visits, while everyone else gets proper bedrooms. Well, Heather has the children to consider. They need structure and proper rest. And I don't deserve a decent night's sleep? You're being dramatic, Autumn. You've always been so sensitive. If you'd call more often or visit more regularly like your sister, maybe you'd feel more included. The circular logic was maddening. I wasn't included because I wasn't present, but when I tried to be present, I wasn't included. After that conversation, I made a difficult decision. I would spend holidays with Brandon's family instead. Their genuine warmth helped heal wounds I'd carried for years. "You're always welcome here," Susan, Brandon's mother, told me that first Thanksgiving at their home. "We've got plenty of room." The simple phrase brought unexpected tears to my eyes. The following spring brought unexpected career developments. My environmental consulting firm had been contracted for a major restoration project in Miami, and my supervisor Diane recommended me to lead the field assessment team. "It's a 6-month assignment initially," she explained, "but there's potential for it to become permanent if you're interested in relocation. The Miami office is expanding, and they need someone with your expertise." The opportunity was professionally exciting: bigger projects, more responsibility, better pay. But personally, it presented complications. Brandon and I had been dating for nearly 2 years, discussing a future together. His architectural firm was firmly established in Chicago. "You should take it," Brandon said when I shared the news. "It's an amazing opportunity. What about us? 6 months is a long time for long distance." He smiled, but I could see the concern in his eyes. "We'll make it work. Weekend visits, video calls." It's only 6 months. We both knew environmental projects rarely followed neat timelines. 6 months could easily become a year or more. Still, I couldn't pass up the career advancement, and Brandon supported my decision wholeheartedly. The first few months of long distance worked better than expected. Brandon flew down 1 weekend a month, and we explored Miami together: South Beach, Little Havana, the Everglades. I flew back to Chicago when project schedules allowed. Video calls became our nightly ritual. But gradually, the strain became evident. Brandon's firm took on a major sustainable housing development, demanding 60-hour workweeks. My fieldwork often took me to remote areas with poor reception. Our calls grew shorter, less frequent. Weekend visits were postponed, then canceled altogether. 4 months into the assignment, during a rare weekend together in Miami, we faced reality over dinner at a beachside restaurant. "I love you," Brandon said, reaching for my hand across the table. "But I don't think either of us is happy with half a relationship." I nodded, fighting tears. "And neither of us wants to ask the other to give up their career. Maybe in a different time or place. We'd have figured it out," I finished. Our breakup was amicable, but devastating nonetheless. Brandon had been my first healthy relationship, showing me what genuine support felt like. Losing that connection left me adrift in a city where I knew few people outside of work. Miami's initial charm faded as loneliness set in. I threw myself into the restoration project, working long hours and weekends. The professional success was undeniable. Our team's assessment had identified critical habitat areas previously overlooked, and my recommendations were incorporated into the final conservation plan. My supervisors were impressed enough to offer me a permanent position as Regional Assessment Director, a significant promotion with a substantial salary increase. Taking the permanent role meant officially leaving Chicago behind. I listed my portion of the apartment I'd shared with Jessica, shipped my belongings south, and signed a lease on a small apartment in Coral Gables. The finality of these actions hit me hard. I was truly starting over alone. Gradually, through workplace connections and a local environmental volunteers group, I began building a social circle. Rachel, a vibrant environmental attorney with a passion for ocean conservation, became my first close friend in Miami. Diana, a soft-spoken botanist specializing in coastal plants, joined our regular happy hours and weekend excursions. Their friendship helped anchor me during the transition. "You need to explore more of Florida," Rachel insisted one Friday evening over drinks. "Miami's great, but there's so much more to see. Let's do a weekend trip to the Gulf Coast." That first road trip to St. Petersburg opened my eyes to a different side of Florida. Away from Miami's glamour and bustle, the Gulf communities offered a more relaxed pace. Pristine beaches stretched for miles with fewer crowds. Historic downtown areas featured charming shops and restaurants in restored buildings. I fell in love with a small beachside community near St. Petersburg during our third weekend excursion. Unlike Miami's flashy oceanfront, this area preserved natural coastline alongside modest, colorful beach cottages. "This feels right," I told Rachel as we walked along the shore. Like somewhere you could actually build a life, not just vacation. Over the next several months, I spent many weekends exploring the area, getting to know locals, researching property values. With my recent promotion and careful saving, homeownership seemed increasingly possible. I began working with a local realtor, viewing properties whenever I could make the 4-hour drive from Miami. The beach house appeared on a listing late one Thursday evening, a 2-bedroom cottage with a screened porch, just 2 blocks from the shore. Built in the 1960s, it retained charming period details while featuring necessary updates like a new roof and updated electrical. Most importantly, it had a spacious garden filled with native plants and enough room for visiting friends. I drove over the following morning, having rearranged meetings and delegated project tasks to my team. The moment I walked through the door, I knew. This was home, not just a house, but the sense of belonging I'd sought my entire life. Making an offer required emotional courage as much as financial commitment. This would be my place, chosen by me, paid for by me. A tangible manifestation of the independence and success I'd built despite family patterns that had undervalued me. When my offer was accepted, I sat alone on the empty porch steps and allowed myself to cry, tears of pride, relief, and a strange sense of vindication. The closing process took 6 weeks. I drove to St. Petersburg for the final walkthrough and signing, then spent that first night in my new home with just an air mattress, ironically, a suitcase, and a bottle of champagne Rachel had gifted me. Sitting on the porch watching the sunset, I took a photo of my bare feet propped against the railing, Gulf breeze tousling my hair, and posted it to social media with a simple caption, "Home sweet home." #BeachHouseDreams, #new chapter. I hadn't expected much response from my family. Over the years, they'd shown minimal interest in my career milestones or life updates. The barrage of messages that followed caught me completely by surprise. My phone began buzzing with notifications within an hour of posting the beach house photo. The first message came from my mother.
Autumn.
"What a gorgeous view. When did you buy a house? Florida looks wonderful this time of year. Your father and I have been saying we need a break from Minnesota winter. Perhaps we could visit soon? Love, Mom." Before I could respond, my father texted, "Congratulations on the house, kiddo. Always wanted to visit the Gulf Coast. Good fishing there, I hear. Let me know when would be a good time for a visit."
Dad.
Then came Heather's lengthy message.
Essis.
"Why didn't you tell us you bought a beach house? It looks amazing. The kids have been begging to go to Florida forever. Emma's on spring break next month and Tyler's been learning about ocean animals in school. It would be perfect timing for us to visit. Cal could use some time away from work too. How many bedrooms do you have? Is there a pull-out couch? Send more pics. Heartsuit, heartsuit, heartsuit." The messages continued rolling in. Uncle Jeff wondering if I was near good fishing spots, Aunt Susan asking about nearby attractions, even distant cousins I barely spoke to expressing sudden interest in reconnecting. I sat on my porch, champagne forgotten, staring at my phone in disbelief. For years, I'd extended invitations to visit me in Chicago, invitations met with polite declinations or outright ignoring. I'd offered to pay for my parents' lights for my 30th birthday 2 years ago, planning to show them my favorite Chicago spots and introduce them to my friends. My mother had responded, "Oh honey, it's not a good time. Heather needs help with the kids that weekend." Now, suddenly, everyone had time, interest, and always wanted to visit Florida. The irony wasn't lost on me. After years of "no room for you" at family gatherings, they all assumed there would automatically be room for them in my new home. The messages triggered a flood of memories. Last Christmas, when I called to ask about visiting Minnesota, my mother had said, "We're keeping it small this year, just immediate family." Later, I saw social media posts showing a house full of relatives, including distant cousins and family friends. 3 Thanksgivings ago, when told there wasn't enough space, I'd spent the holiday alone in my Chicago apartment, ordering Chinese takeout and watching holiday movies by myself. I'd cried myself to sleep that night, wondering what was so fundamentally wrong with me that my own family couldn't make space at their table. The memories kept coming, each one sharper than the last. My 30th birthday, spent with Chicago friends when my family forgot to call. My graduation ceremony, when my parents left immediately after to attend Heather's housewarming. Countless holidays where I was the only family member excluded. My phone buzzed again, another message from Heather. Tyler's so excited to visit his auntie's beach house. When can we book flights? The assumption that they could simply invite themselves, after years of excluding me, triggered something unexpected. Not just sadness, but anger. My hands shook as I set the phone down without responding. My chest tightened, breathing became difficult, and tears blurred my vision. I recognized the symptoms of a panic attack beginning. I stepped outside, focusing on the evening air, the sound of distant waves, the feeling of wooden porch boards beneath my bare feet. Grounding techniques I'd learned during a brief period of therapy after the breakup with Brandon. Gradually, my breathing steadied. When I felt calm enough, I called Rachel. They're all inviting themselves to stay, I explained after recounting the messages. Like it's completely normal, like they haven't been excluding me for years. What are you going to say? Rachel asked. I don't know. Part of me wants to tell them exactly where they can go, and it's not my guest bedroom. Understandable. But another part still wants their approval, their love. How pathetic is that? It's not pathetic, Autumn. They're your family. We're biologically wired to seek connection with our relatives, even when they don't deserve it. After we hung up, I sat watching the stars appear over the gulf, considering my options. I could acquiesce, allow them to visit, potentially subjecting myself to more of the same treatment on my own turf. I could refuse outright, potentially severing already tenuous family ties. Or I could establish boundaries, clear, firm limits on what I would and wouldn't accept. The next morning, I called Dr. Wilson, the therapist I'd seen briefly in Miami. Fortunately, she had a cancellation and could see me that afternoon. I made the 4-hour drive back to Miami, needing professional guidance before responding to my family. What you're describing is a common family pattern, Dr. Wilson said after I'd explained the situation. You've been cast in a certain role, the independent one who doesn't need attention or support. When you demonstrate success or autonomy, like buying this house, it challenges that narrative. But why the sudden interest now? Florida beach houses have obvious appeal, she smiled. But more significantly, your success threatens the family hierarchy. By showing you don't need them, you've inadvertently made yourself more valuable in their eyes. So what do I do? That depends on what you want. Do you want a relationship with your family? If so, what kind of relationship would be healthy for you? We spent the rest of the session exploring these questions, examining my genuine desires versus conditioned responses. By the end, I had greater clarity. I wanted connection with my family, but not at the cost of my self-respect. I wanted them in my life, but with boundaries that protected my emotional well-being. Armed with this clarity, I crafted a careful response to my family's messages. I thanked them for their congratulations, explained that I was still settling in, and suggested that visits would need to wait until later in the year. I kept the tone light, but firm. The responses came quickly and revealed much. My mother replied with thinly veiled guilt tactics. We were so looking forward to seeing you. It's been so long since the whole family was together. My father was more direct. We've already looked at flights for next month. Can't you arrange things sooner? Heather sent a photo of her children looking sad with the caption, Emma and Tyler will be so disappointed. Their unified pressure triggered something unexpected, a sudden, complete certainty that I deserved better. Years of accumulated hurt crystallized into resolve. I opened my laptop and began typing an email addressed to my entire family. The email I composed that evening became a watershed moment in my relationship with my family. After dozens of rewrites and careful editing, I finally hit send around midnight.
It read,
Dear Mom, Dad, Heather, and Kyle, I've been thinking about your request to visit my new home, and I need to address something important before we discuss any potential visits. For years, I've been told there was no room for me during family gatherings. I've been excluded from countless holidays, celebrations, and family events. To help you understand my perspective, here are some specific examples. Thanksgiving 2014, told there was no room despite my childhood bedroom being available. Christmas 2015, informed the family was traveling, only to see social media posts of everyone at the cabin. My 30th birthday, 2022, offered to fly you to Chicago at my expense, told it wasn't a good time. Last Christmas, Told you we're keeping it small while hosting extended family and friends. These aren't isolated incidents, but a consistent pattern that has left me feeling unwelcome and unvalued in my own family. Now that I have something desirable, a beach house in Florida, suddenly there's interest in spending time with me. I've spent years trying to earn a place in this family, only to be repeatedly shown that there isn't room for me. So you'll understand why I find it difficult to make room for you now. I'm not writing this to hurt anyone or to get revenge. I'm writing because I believe in honesty and because I still hope for a healthier relationship with all of you. But that relationship needs to be based on mutual respect and consideration. I'm open to rebuilding our connection, but it will take time and effort from everyone involved. For now, I'm not comfortable hosting overnight guests as I settle into my new home. If you visit Florida in the future, I'd be willing to meet for dinner and show you around the area. I hope you can understand and respect my position. With love, Autumn. I slept fitfully that night, waking repeatedly to check my phone. By morning, there were no responses. The silence continued through the day as I drove back to St. Petersburg, unpacked more boxes, and arranged furniture deliveries. By evening, I began to wonder if they'd received the email at all. Then my phone rang, my mother. I took a deep breath before answering. "How could you write such hurtful things?" she demanded without preamble. "After everything we've done for you." "Mom, I wasn't trying to hurt anyone. I was being honest about my experiences. You've always been so dramatic, Autumn. We never excluded you intentionally. Life gets busy, plans change. Not everything is a personal attack. It's not about one incident, Mom. It's about a pattern that's continued for years." "Well, your father is very upset." Heather was in tears. The familiar guilt tactic surfaced, but this time they didn't work. Years of therapy and self-reflection had strengthened my resolve. "I'm sorry they're upset, but my feelings matter too. I've been hurt repeatedly, and no one seemed concerned about that." The conversation continued in circles, my mother alternating between defensive denial and emotional manipulation. When we finally hung up, nothing was resolved, but I felt oddly lighter. I'd spoken my truth, regardless of whether it was accepted. My father called the next day, his approach more direct. "Your mother's beside herself, Autumn. I don't know what's gotten into you, but this isn't how our family deals with problems." "That's exactly the issue, Dad. Our family doesn't deal with problems. We pretend they don't exist, especially when they involve how I'm treated." "That's ridiculous. You've always been welcome." "When, Dad?" "Name one holiday in the past 5 years when I was actively included, when someone made sure there was proper space for me, when my presence was a priority." His silence spoke volumes. Heather's reaction came via text, a lengthy message accusing me of jealousy, selfishness, and trying to ruin our family. She insisted I'd always been included when it was possible and that her children's needs naturally took precedence. "Some of us have actual families to consider," she wrote. The barb intended to highlight my single, childless status. I didn't respond immediately to Heather. Her message required careful consideration, and I didn't trust myself to reply without escalating the situation. Instead, I focused on settling into my new home and community, joining a local beach conservation group, and exploring nearby nature preserves. A week after my email, I received an unexpected call from Uncle Dave, my father's brother. We'd always been friendly, but not particularly close. "I heard about what happened," he said after initial pleasantries. "Your dad called to complain about your ridiculous accusations." My heart sank. "I suppose you're calling to tell me I'm being unreasonable too?" "Actually, no."
His voice softened.
"I've seen how they treat you, Autumn. At family gatherings, holidays. The difference in how they respond to you versus your sister. It's not right, and it's not your imagination." Tears sprang to my eyes at this unexpected validation. "Thank you for saying that. Look, I love my brother, but he's always favored Heather. She reminds him of your grandmother, same personality, same social charm. You're more like your grandfather, thoughtful, deep thinking. Neither is better, just different, but Robert never understood quiet strength." We talked for nearly an hour, Uncle Dave sharing observations from years of family dynamics I hadn't been aware of. Before hanging up, he said, "I'm proud of you, Autumn. Setting boundaries isn't easy, especially with family, but it's necessary sometimes." That conversation gave me the strength to respond to Heather with calm clarity rather than reactive emotion. I acknowledged her perspective while standing firm in my own experience. "I'm not asking for special treatment," I wrote. "Just equal consideration and respect." The weeks that followed were difficult but clarifying. My parents maintained minimal contact, clearly hoping I'd apologize and retract my accusations. Heather vacillated between angry messages and attempts to pretend nothing had happened. I held my ground, responding with consistent, calm boundaries. Uncle Dave and Aunt Barbara reached out regularly, offering support and perspective. To my surprise, my grandmother Eleanor, now in her 80s and living in a retirement community, called after hearing about the situation. "It's about time you stood up for yourself," she said with characteristic directness. "I've watched this pattern for years and wished you'd recognize your own worth sooner." Gradually, my immediate family's responses evolved. My mother's initial defensiveness gave way to reluctant acknowledgement of some misunderstandings. My father, never comfortable with emotional confrontation, suggested we move forward and forget the past. Heather remained the most resistant, unwilling to relinquish her position as the family's central figure. I maintained my boundary about visits, offering instead to meet them for dinner if they came to Florida. "I'm not ready for overnight guests yet," I explained. "This is about establishing healthy patterns, not punishing anyone." 3 months after my initial email, my mother called with a different tone. "I've been thinking about what you said," she began hesitantly. "Looking back at some of the holidays, I can see how it might have seemed like we were excluding you. It wasn't a full acknowledgement, but it was progress. Thank you for saying that, Mom. It means a lot. Your father and I have been talking. We'd like to try to do better. Maybe start with phone calls more regularly? And we'd still like to see your new home, whenever you're comfortable with that." "I'd like that too," I replied, cautiously hopeful. Regular calls would be a good start. Setting boundaries hadn't destroyed my family relationships as I'd feared. Instead, it had created space for potentially healthier connections to develop. Not perfect, not immediately transformed, but moving in a better direction. That Thanksgiving, 6 months after buying my beach house, I hosted my first holiday gathering. Not for my immediate family, that bridge was still being carefully rebuilt, but for my chosen family. Rachel and Diana drove from Miami. My new neighbors, the Carlsons, joined with their teenage daughter. 2 colleagues from the conservation group brought homemade pies. My small cottage was filled with laughter, genuine conversation, and the warm embrace of people who valued me exactly as I was. We ate on the screened porch, watching pelicans dive into the Gulf waters as the sun set in brilliant orange and pink streaks. Instead of traditional turkey, we had a seafood feast sourced from local fishermen. No one relegated me to an air mattress or treated me as an afterthought. Everyone contributed to the meal, helped with cleanup, and expressed genuine interest in each other's lives. "This is what holidays should feel like," Rachel observed as we sat around the fire pit in my garden that evening. "Comfortable, not performative." To chosen family, Diana raised her glass. "The people who see us clearly and love us anyway." The toast resonated deeply. Throughout my life, I'd measured my worth through my biological family's eyes, coming up short every time. Now I recognized the wealth of connection available beyond those limited confines. My relationships with my immediate family evolved slowly in the months that followed. True to her word, my mother began calling weekly. Our conversations remained somewhat superficial, but occasionally she'd ask genuine questions about my work or new home. My father joined these calls sporadically, his gruff attempts at connection awkward but sincere. Heather proved the most resistant to change. Accustomed to being the family's central focus, she struggled with the shifting dynamic. Her messages oscillated between performative interest in my life and subtle digs about my dramatic boundary setting. I maintained consistent, kind responses without allowing her to pull me into old patterns. In February, Grandma Eleanor visited for a week, my first overnight guest. At 83, she'd lost none of her sharp insight or direct manner. We spent mornings on the porch watching shorebirds, afternoons visiting local gardens and art galleries, and evenings sharing family stories I'd never heard. "Your grandfather would be so proud of you," she told me one evening. "Not just the career success, though that too. He'd admire your courage to stand up for yourself while still keeping your heart open." I wish I'd known him better, I said, treasuring these connections to my past. You're more like him than you know. He was always the quiet strength in our family, the one who held things together without needing the spotlight. In March, Uncle Dave and Aunt Barbara visited, respectfully staying at a nearby hotel despite my offer of the guest room. We want to see your place but not invade your space, Uncle Dave explained. Their visit brought healing conversations and deeper connection. They shared childhood stories about my father that helped me understand his emotional limitations without excusing his behavior. As spring turned to summer, I received an unexpected message from my parents. They'd been discussing a Florida trip in October and wanted to know if I'd be comfortable with them visiting, staying at a hotel, of course. We understand if you're not ready, my mother wrote. We're trying to respect your boundaries. That simple acknowledgement, recognizing and respecting my boundaries, meant more than any apology could have. I agreed to their visit, setting clear expectations about its duration and structure. When October arrived, I felt nervous but prepared for their 3-day visit. I'd arranged dinner reservations, a boat tour of the bay, and plenty of independent exploration time for them. They arrived on a Friday afternoon, my father looking uncomfortable in vacation clothes, my mother clutching a houseplant as a gift. Your home is lovely, she said after the tour, genuine appreciation in her voice. You've created something special here. Thank you, I replied, the simple acknowledgement warming something long cold within me. The visit wasn't perfect. Old patterns occasionally surfaced. My mother interrupted my work stories to check her phone for messages from Heather. My father struggled to show interest in my conservation projects. But there were also moments of genuine connection. My mother admired my garden of native plants. My father helped fix a stubborn kitchen cabinet. We found neutral conversation topics and even shared occasional laughter. On their final evening, as we walked along the beach at sunset, my mother slipped her arm through mine. I've been thinking a lot about what you wrote in that email, she said, eyes on the horizon. I didn't want to see it then, but you were right about many things. We didn't make space for you the way we should have. The acknowledgement, long sought but never expected, brought tears to my eyes. Thank you for saying that. I can't promise we'll get everything right moving forward, she continued. Old habits are hard to break, but I want you to know we're trying. It wasn't a dramatic transformation or perfect resolution. Real family healing rarely is, but it was a genuine step toward healthier dynamics. After they left, I felt a complicated mix of emotions: hope, lingering sadness for all the lost years, cautious optimism about the future. The beach house had become more than just a home. It had become the catalyst for reclaiming my self-worth and redefining family relationships on my terms. As the holidays approached again, I considered my options carefully before extending a Thanksgiving invitation to my parents and Uncle Dave's family. Heather and her family would be spending the holiday with Kyle's relatives, simplifying the dynamics for this first family gathering in my home. Meanwhile, my personal life blossomed in unexpected ways. Through the conservation group, I met Michael, a marine biologist studying seahorse populations in the bay. With kind eyes and an easy laugh, he shared my passion for environmental protection and quiet evenings. Our relationship developed slowly, built on genuine conversation and mutual respect. When I eventually told him about my family history, he listened without judgment. Family patterns are powerful, he said. Breaking them takes tremendous courage. I'm still figuring it out, I admitted. Some days I feel strong and clear about my boundaries. Other days I slip back into old insecurities. That's how healing works, he replied. It's never linear. As I prepare for Thanksgiving next week, my parents, Uncle Dave and Aunt Barbara, Michael, and local friends gathering around my table, I reflect on the journey of the past year. From exclusion to empowerment, from seeking approval to creating my own sense of home. The beach house represents more than a property investment. It symbolizes the space I've claimed for myself in the world. A space where I determine who enters and how they must behave to remain welcome. A space where there is always room for kindness, respect, and genuine connection. If you've ever felt like the outsider in your own family, know that you're not alone. Creating boundaries isn't selfish. It's necessary for healthy relationships. Sometimes the family we choose becomes more important than the family we're born into. And sometimes, setting those boundaries creates the possibility for healing we never thought possible. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family members? How did it change your relationships? Share your experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life family stories. Thank you for listening, and remember, you deserve to be treated with respect and consideration, especially by those who claim to love you.